Berlin, January 1933. You are a journalist. You have been following this man for 10 years. You have sat through his speeches. Read the book he wrote in prison. Sent reports back to your newsroom in New York that no one bothered to read. Because who cares about a failed Austrian shouting in Munich beer halls? But tonight, you stand outside the Chancellor's building and watch thousands of torches blaze across the streets of Berlin. And you understand, the world has just changed. You will witness everything, from beginning to end. From the day an unknown man stood on a wooden chair in a Munich beer hall, to the day smoke rises from the ashes of Berlin. And this is what you see. Act 1. The Unknown Man, 1919 to 1923. Munich, October 1919. You are 26 years old, just assigned by the Chicago Tribune to Germany to report on the aftermath of World War I. Germany in 1919 is a shattered nation. The Treaty of Versailles was signed in June, and Germans call it a diktat, an order, not a treaty. Germany loses 13% of its territory, 10% of its population, must pay 132 billion gold marks in reparations, an unimaginable number. The army is limited to 100,000 men. A nation once proud of its military strength, now forced to kneel before the world. Speech, German Workers' Party. Tonight, Sterneckerbrow. You have no plans tonight. You go in, and then he steps up. A small man, square mustache, pale blue eyes staring straight into the crowd as if looking through each person. You open your notebook. Right, Adolf Hitler, 30 years old, veteran, corporal. He begins to speak. You have heard many politicians, speeches in the U.S. Congress, in the British Parliament, but never this. He doesn't read. He doesn't hold paper. He looks straight at the crowd and speaks, as if every word is pulled from their own pain.
Germany was betrayed, not defeated on the battlefield, but stabbed in the back by those sitting in banks, in newspapers, in our own government.
The crowd rises, applauding, shouting. You look around, men with flushed faces, fists raised, veterans, unemployed workers, young students. You write, dangerous. Not sure why, but dangerous. You send the article to New York. The editors reply, not newsworthy. Find something else. Act 2. Coup and Realization, 1923 to 1924. Munich, November 8th, 1923. For years have passed. You are still in Germany. The German mark has collapsed. Hyperinflation so extreme people burn money for heat because it's cheaper than wood. A loaf of bread costs 200 billion marks. People carry cash in wheelbarrows. Hitler, now leader of the NSDAP, sees opportunity. Tonight, you are in this beer hall because a source told you something big will happen. You duck. Hitler storms in with SA men, his paramilitary force, fires a shot into the ceiling, climbs onto a table and shouts,
"The National Revolution has begun!"
You look straight into his eyes from less than 10 meters away. Not madness, not panic. You see calculation, cold and absolute confidence. November 9th, 1923. He leads 2,000 men through Munich streets to seize the defense ministry. You run alongside, notebook in hand, heart racing. Bavarian police open fire. 16 Nazis killed instantly. The march collapses. Hitler falls, reportedly dislocates his shoulder, then flees. You stand in the street. Bodies on cobblestones. Beer hall putsch, total failure. You send headline, Austrian agitator arrested. Nazi movement finished. You were wrong. The worst article of your career. In prison, Hitler writes Mein Kampf. You read the manuscript through a source, page by page. And for the first time, you are truly afraid. Not because he is insane, but because he is clear. Lebensraum, living space in the East. Destroy Jewish influence. Build a 1,000-year empire. No metaphor. No disguise. You send article. The most dangerous book written in Europe. They don't publish it. Hitler is released December 1924, less than 9 months served. Act 3. The Rise, 1929 to 1933. Berlin, 1930. The Great Depression from America hits Germany like a tidal wave. 6 million Germans unemployed. Banks collapse. Former middle class, doctors, engineers, teachers stand in line for bread. And Hitler, you watch him during this period, like a man finally handed the exact weapon he needs. You follow him from city to city. Hamburg, Cologne, Frankfurt, Dresden. You observe how he reads crowds like sheet music, knowing exactly when to lower his voice to a whisper, when to erupt until microphones shake. Knowing who sits before him, workers hear about jobs. The middle class hears about national pride. Veterans hear about betrayal. One message, 1,000 different faces. September 1930. Instap jumps from 2.6% in 1928 to 18.3%. Second largest party in Reichstag. You sit in your Berlin office, staring at the numbers, remembering that night in 1919. 11 years. You call New York.
You need to run my stories. Now! This man is dangerous.
This time, they listen. Late 1932. You think maybe you were wrong. The Nazi movement is losing momentum. Hitler refuses the vice-chancellor position, wants total power or nothing. Maybe he will destroy himself. January 30th, 1933. You wake up.
William, get outside. Hindenburg just appointed Hitler chancellor.
You run into the cold Berlin night. You stand there, notebook in hand, and for the first time in 14 years, you don't know what to write. Act 4. Germany devours itself. 1933 to 1935. February 27th, 1933. You're at dinner when you see the sky burning. The Reichstag is on fire. You arrive. Flames rising from the dome. A Dutch communist, Marinus van der Lubbe, is arrested. The next morning, Hitler declares it a communist plot. Reichstag fire decree. Civil liberties suspended. Arrest without warrant. Thousands arrested overnight. You see names of colleagues. You understand. It doesn't matter who burned it. What matters is how fast he used it. March 23rd, 1933. Enabling Act. 444 votes to 94. Democracy votes to end itself. Books burn. Hemingway, Freud, Einstein, Marx, Heine. A student beside you says, "This is purification." You remember Heine. Where they burn books, they will burn people. August 2nd, 1934. Hindenburg dies. Hitler becomes Führer. Army swears loyalty to him. 1935. Nuremberg laws. Jews stripped of citizenship. A Jewish doctor tells you,
I am no longer German. But I don't know what I am.
You write it down, and you see his eyes. A man erased. Act 5. Kristallnacht, 1938. You hear glass break. The city burns. Shops destroyed. Synagogues burning. 7,500 stores. 267 synagogues. 30,000 arrested. Kristallnacht. A poetic name. An organized massacre. You see neighbors watching, laughing, and you realize the worst is not the men in uniform. It's those who watch. Act 6. The War, 1939 to 1942. September 1st, 1939, 4:45 a.m. You are in Warsaw when the first bomb falls. Germany invades Poland. Britain and France declare war on Germany 2 days later. World War II begins. You have covered the battlefields of Spain, the crises across Europe, but nothing has prepared you for this. June 1940, France surrenders. Hitler stands before the Eiffel Tower and has his photograph taken. You stare at that photograph in the newspaper, and your mind goes back to that evening in 1919. In a Munich beer hall, 21 years. From a man screaming at 100 people in a smoke-filled room. to the master of nearly all of Western Europe. Posing beneath the Eiffel Tower. June 22, 1941. Operation Barbarossa. Hitler tears up the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact and launches 3 million soldiers against the Soviet Union, the largest military invasion in the history of warfare. You read the dispatch and think of Mein Kampf, the book he wrote in prison in 1924. Lebensraum, living space to the east. He had said it plainly, 17 years ago, and no one listened. January 20th, 1942. 15 senior officials of the Nazi Reich gather at a villa on Lake Wannsee for a meeting that lasts 90 minutes. The agenda: the final solution to the Jewish question. You will not learn of this meeting until after the war, when the documents are found. But its consequences, you will witness them slowly. In the years that follow, the extermination camps in Poland, Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, Belzec, 6 million Jews, millions of Poles, Roma, people with disabilities, Soviet prisoners of war. There are things that the language of a journalist is not large enough to hold. You have learned that now. Act 7. The Collapse, 1944 to 1945. June 6, 1944. D-Day. You stand on the deck of an Allied warship, looking toward the coastline of Normandy. And for the first time in your career as a journalist, you see hope with a shape you can point to. 156,000 Allied troops land in a single day. Hitler's Atlantic Wall begins to crack. You follow the news every day. Paris liberated in August 1944. Soviet forces push into Poland. The concentration camps are opened, and what is found inside brings the entire world to a standstill. April 1945. Berlin is dying. Soviet forces have reached the outskirts of the city. Artillery fire never stops. Civilians dig trenches in the streets. Children, 14, 15 years old, are handed rifles and sent to the front. Hitler, you hear from sources inside, is in the bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, moving divisions that no longer exist across maps, ordering counterattacks with armies that exist only in his mind. April 30th, 1945, 3:30 p.m. You are on the outskirts of Berlin when the news reaches you. Adolf Hitler is dead, a gunshot to the temple. In the bunker, Eva Braun, whom he had married just one day before, died beside him. By poison. Their bodies were carried up to the garden of the Reich Chancellery, soaked in petrol, and burned, as he had wished. You sit down on the curb, your back against a crumbling wall, and for the first time in many years, you do not open your notebook. Epilogue, after everything. May 8th, 1945. Germany surrenders unconditionally. You walk through the streets of Berlin, the city where, 26 years ago, you first arrived with a notebook and a typewriter. There is nothing left. The grand buildings are rubble. The wide boulevards are craters. The wealth of a civilization lying in ash. And the numbers, you try to process them the way a journalist would, the way the profession taught you. 70 to 85 million people dead in World War II. Among them, 6 million Jews killed systematically. But you can no longer process them as numbers. You think of the Jewish doctor in 1935, I am no longer German. But I don't know what I am. You don't know if he survived. You think of the young student standing beside you before the burning books. This is purification. You don't know if he survived either. In 26 years of following Adolf Hitler, from a small beer hall in Munich to the ashes of Berlin, you learned one thing that no school of journalism ever taught you. Evil does not come in darkness. It comes in daylight, with soaring speeches, with torches blazing in the streets, with the applause of millions. It does not hide its intentions. Hitler had written everything down in a book. In 1924, he said plainly what he intended to do. The world heard him and chose not to believe him, not because the world was foolish, but because people, you among them, tend to believe that no one truly does what they say they will, that someone will stop it, that the system will correct itself, that civilization has some limit it cannot cross.